We're going to think now about a little bit more complexity in this. Validate rules are not just about checking the data in the individual records. They come into their own by allowing us to create complex multi-row and inter-table rules. The examples that we've seen so far have been intra-record. We've been looking at two values within a single record, or we could just be looking at a single value within a single record. But now we want to look at examples that cross multiple rows and multiple tables. Here you can see that we've got an error message on the screen. It tells us that you've broken the campaign budget by 1,500 and there are validation errors. Please correct the highlighted entry, and we can see that the wave budget field has a indicator next to it indicating that this is the field with the error. What I've done is I've defined a rule within the marketing screens. The rule has been triggered because I've tried to define a budget on an individual wave that would take the total for all of the waves over the allowed campaign total. So there's a campaign total, and then the individual waves have their own values, but there has to be a total that is checked against. Now what I've done here within the JavaScript is to reference the data passed from the screen. You can see that I've done this by using the values method. You can also look at the context of where we are. So I look through that code, we can understand that we're using this idea of context, and of course context is something that we've met before, this idea that context information can be read in validate scripts in exactly the same way as we used it in create scripts. So we have all of the information available to us depending on where we are within the system. So if we're on a communication record, we're probably going to have not only the communications context but also the opportunity that it belongs to, or if it was a case, communication associated with the case, whatever its parent is, plus whatever its company, person and user who's using the system is going to be. So the context information for the campaign, you can see there we've got the my record ID crm.getContextInfo and campaigns budget crm.getContextInfo. We are able to get hold of the contextual information to then allow us to retrieve other records from the waves table that belong to that campaign. And the information from the campaign and the information from the waves allow us to know what the total allocated budget for the campaign is, and then work out what has been allocated against the individual waves. But this is fine. This is just a simple bit of calculation, but the complexity is not necessarily in the rule itself, but rather in the way in which rules can interact with others. So that's when we're referencing multiple tables, multiple rows. But let's consider this simple rule. This simple rule is an example of something that may well have started off as a create script, but you can see that this tells a user that they're just about to do something that will be blocked. And if you look at this, it's checking to see whether in the context of the case, to see whether that case that we're working on, the context of the parental company, does that company, that is the parent to this case, have a service level agreement? So if it doesn't, then we're putting the error up saying a case may not be created for a customer without a service level agreement. Now this is typically implemented as a create script, in which case the user does see that message displayed on the screen. But we know that the thing about create scripts is that it never blocks a commit. But we could express this as a validate rule that will only fire as the data is submitted to the database. So we could take something that was defined as a create script on that field and copy it into our validate script as well. So create scripts that warn and inform the user can be used with validate scripts that block the bad data from the system. And it's not just the usage between a create script and a validate script that can come into play, we can also imagine uses for rules expressed to correct data on the on-change scripts that you may wish to doubly check and enforce with the validate rule. So here, for example, you might have a series of rules that within an on-change context within the browser detects whether or not the user is entering the wrong type of data into the field and warns the user that they're entering the wrong type of data into the field. But you could back that up by expressing that as a validation rule as well that absolutely blocks the user from that. So on change, you might be detecting something as the user is doing it, but without a validation rule, they could still go ahead and enter the incorrect data. But with a validation rule, you're able to block the behavior from happening. So this acts as a double layer of protection for the integrity of data for the system. This is a belt and braces approach to business rules.